I've got to be honest with you. There are some weeks where I'm not too jazzed about the crop of indies I pass on to all of you in these low-budget binges, but this week isn't one of those. This week is a solid roster, so let's get right into it and start binging. Welcome back to ML Miller Frights. I'm ML Miller. Before we begin, please do me a favor and punch that like button down below. Share this video with all of your social media addicted pals. Click subscribe to this channel and ring that bell for notifications. Low Budget Binge is where we venture down the path less traveled and look at low budget, no budget, and sometimes international films that never get that top billing you see with the usual Hollywood fare. I'll indicate in the review down below where you can find these films along with their trailers. Here we go. Terror Train 2 is new streaming on Tubi. It's directed by Philippe Gagnon and written by Ian Carpenter and Aaron Martin. I have my review for Terror Train 2022, which I posted last August, down before the comments. In order to get some catharsis from the traumatic events from the last time she was on a train, Alana, played by Robin Alomar, is coerced by her overprotective roommate Claudia, played by Nia Rome, to take a ride on another terror train, celebrating the 1-year anniversary of the murders. She's joined by all of the survivors from the previous film, train conductor Sadie, played by Nadine Babha, social media whore Pet, played by Romy Weltman, her best pal Mary, played by Tori Barban, the class president, played by Dakota Jamal Wellman, and don't forget that skeezy magician played by Tim Rozon. Plus you've got some newcomers, reporter Lucy, played by Lisa Trong, and gender-fluid security guard Xander, played by S. Holdmoser. That's a pretty full train. But don't worry, there's a new killer making their way through the cabins with a mask and an assortment of bladed weapons to whittle that cast down. Alana is forced to face her fears and take on the killer for the second time. I don't know what I was expecting. The first Terror Train was kind of a limp biscuit of a horror movie. It wasn't bloody. It wasn't scary. It wasn't really interesting because none of the characters were worth caring about. I don't know why I thought the second outing, by basically the same cast and crew, would be any better. But Terror Train 2 actually is in some ways. The characters are somewhat more interesting as each has their own reason to be on the train. Robin Alomar isn't any more sufferable here. She has CW-level acting skills, as do most of the others starring in this film, but her story is more interesting now that the initial trauma is over and she's forced to face her demons all over again. The same can be said for most of the characters. While the actors aren't great, they're okay at conveying the development of their characters. Even smaller characters like Mary get a small moment to process the horrors from the last train ride. My favorite character continues to be Pet, played with devilish glee by Romy Weltman, who desperately wants the fame Alana received from being the final girl in the last film and goes out of her way to promote herself over all others' concerns. Plus, she's pretty smoking hot. Again, the magician, played by Tom Rozon, exudes a creepy vibe, even when he's trying to be sincere. It's the Richard Grieco hair, flashy clothes, and close talking that immediately screams playground watcher and makes you want to keep your distance from him. Last but not least, there's the security guard, Xander, played by S. Holdmoser, who apparently is a stunt person and has appeared in quite a few films and TV shows, but their lisp, gait, and slight build never lives up to the tough talk they give throughout the film. If you want to highlight how tough a character is, how about showing a scene with them actually being active and tough? The tough talk, with nothing to back it up, just isn't convincing. Seems despite the fact that this actor is capable of doing action, the filmmakers were more about LGBTQ representation than actually making a cool character. The mystery is overly complex, of course. Red herrings are tossed out left and right. One of them is never really cleared up, while the final unmasking proved to be disappointing, considering the potential of what the character could have delivered in further sequels. Terror Train 2 is Scream Light, leaning heavy on the self-aware quips from the social media addicted characters. Online persona is a major aspect of the film, as it's the same preoccupation of the intended audience of this film. Terror Train 2 is slightly bloodier than the first one, but again feels run-of-the-mill, It's a step up. It's not a great slasher film by any lengths, but Terror Train 2 is a marked improvement from the first one and proof that you can whip together a sequel in a short amount of time, less than a year. If you've seen the first one and made it through, you might as well check this one out too. That's as much of a recommendation you're going to get from me on Terror Train 2. She Came from the Woods is new in select theaters from Mainframe Pictures. It's directed by Erik Bloomquist and written by Erik Bloomquist and Carson Bloomquist. As summer comes to an end at Camp Briarbrook, a group of counselors gather together to celebrate the end of their responsibilities. But as they begin a debaucherous night of drinking, drugging, and sexing, they decide to perform a ritual in honor of a local legend of an evil nurse who used to gather children in the surrounding woods and perform twisted medical experiments on them. Turns out the ritual actually works, and the evil nurse rises from the grave to enact her revenge upon the counselors. She Came from the Woods is kind of a tonal mess, but one of those tonal messes that you used to get in the 80s, where there's a lot of humor and heart, but there's also a lot of adult themes going on, along with all of the gore and violence, of course. It sort of reminds me of Meatballs with a heavy dose of The Burning, which is basically Meatballs with the slasher tossed into it in the first place. The humor is solid. These are actors with good comic timing, especially the overly belligerent Adam Wepler, who as Dylan fights with everyone for really no apparent reason. Well, there is a reason, and it gives the character some surprising depth, but still seeing him be a total asshole is really kind of fun. The rest of the campers do a great job of being wholesome and caught up in the camp drama of who is trying to sleep with who, and who's sheepish in letting the other know that they're interested in them. While it isn't as hilarious as Wet Hot American Summer, there's that type of acidic wit going on in She Came from the Woods, which I found to be surprisingly effective. But apart from that, there's a strong heart to this film, as it focuses on a family who has been working hard to keep the camp open and running for their children. Madman's Cara Cuono is great as the lead counselor and mother to her 2 grown sons who help her run the camp. And it's great seeing William Sadler as the owner and patriarch of the family. Sadler's an actor who always gives his all, and does so here as he genuinely cares about the camp and the kids. This is a film that seems to have warm feelings about summer camp, and the filmmaking brothers, Erik Bloomquist and Carson Bloomquist, communicate those meaningful memories very well. But aside from all of the tender moments and chuckles, She Came from the Woods also delivers in some very chilling scenes. There's a very cool scene where the kids disappear from a school bus as they leave the camp, and a few others as the campers encounter the evil nurse and all the other horrors in the woods. While it is kind of goofy, seeing jars full of blood hanging from trees in the middle of the forest is an uncanny sight. But still, who takes the time to fill all those jars with blood and hang them from tree branches? And why do you do that? If you think about it too much, it just feels kind of goofy, so try not to think about it. That said, there are some very gory moments as the evil nurse's ghost tears through the counselors, and one very gnarly burn victim practical effect that will make your toes curl, and then surprisingly laugh quite a bit. It's a really great moment. Sadly, She Came to the Woods kind of falls apart in the last act as too many unnecessary connections are made between the family running the camp and the main threat. The film falls into conventional scenes seen many times before, as if all the effort was made in the first half of the film. That said, the evil nurse is one creepy-ass villain. There's a lot of impressive gore, and I like the adult humor that reminded me of those tonally wonky days of old. She Came from the Woods is not perfect, but looking back at those retro camping slasher teen sex comedies, neither were they. Deep Fear, aka Bunker 17, is new streaming on Screambox. It's directed by Grégory Beghin and written by Nicolas Tackian. 3 tourists go to Paris after their graduation and pay an urban explorer to take them on a trip through the catacombs under the city. Once in the underground maze, they find themselves lost with a gang of neo-Nazis after them and an ancient evil lurking in the shadows. While the setting is quite familiar, if you've seen films like Catacombs and As Above, So Below, I found myself intrigued by the chills and thrills that Deep Fear delivers. Not only does it highlight the truly claustrophobic nature of dithering around in these tunnels under the city, but the film also adds the menace of a gang of skinheads and an actual relic still living and waiting to be reactivated since World War II, wandering around the tunnels too. These menaces keep on compounding as the film goes on,
The film also reminded me of Barbarian in a way that you never knew what kind of horror was going to pop out from the darkness down one of these halls next. That unpredictability is both appreciated and admired, as this has been a setting for horror for films before, but never in exactly this way. For that kind of originality, I tip my hat to Deep Fear. The sustained action and suspense really make for a swiftly moving film once the trio enter the catacombs. This occurs quite early in the film, so the bulk of Deep Fear crackles with energy in places where most has getting-to-know-you filler time. You actually get to know these characters while they're moving, but none of them are fleshed out too much. Still, enough is revealed about the three kids that I found myself rooting for them to escape this myriad of horrors. While there is occasionally gore, most of the horror comes from the atmosphere of the tunnels, with the kids charging around through the darkness, running away from something, or running into something. The big bad is quite menacing, and there's a demon dog that really should have been used to more effect, but I feel the budget didn't really allow too many effects shots with the zombie-like dog. Still, the POV shots of the dog monster running through the tunnels is an effective cheat. Deep Fear is going to be very reminiscent of everything from the aforementioned Catacombs movies to films like The Outpost, The Descent, and even Dead Snow, though without Dead Snow's excellent wit and humor. It does deliver a dark and diabolical little tale that once again tells me that a trip to the catacombs is not something I would ever do. If you don't mind the familiar and the overpowering sense of claustrophobia, check out Deep Fear. Daughter is new in select theaters, digital download, and on demand from Dark Star Pictures. It's directed and written by Corey Deshon. A teenage girl, played by Vivian Nago, is abducted and forced to play the role of daughter by a manipulative control freak named Father, played by Casper Van Dien, and Mother, played by Elise Din, and forced to be the playmate of their son, Ian Alexander. Having brainwashed his family into believing the air outside is toxic and full of sick people, Father attempts to keep order within his home, though Daughter proves to be a hard mind to break. Daughter is a subtle and unnerving nightmare of a film. You don't see the abduction of Daughter. You don't know why Father does what he does, or what he does when he leaves the home. Though there is a snippet of the outside at the beginning and the end, the bulk of the film takes place within the pristine and orderly home that is actually a prison to most inside. What plays out is a horrifying scenario with little violence or bloodshed, but the psychological terrors persist all the way through. While I feel the process of brainwashing could have been taken a bit further, and the expanse of Father's manipulations been explored a bit more, it does provide a wonderful snapshot of one man's struggle to keep order in a chaotic world, and how all it takes is for one chaotic agent to tear it all down. While some might scoff at the fact that Casper Van Dien plays the heavy in Daughter, he delivers an intense and scary performance, though, as Father. The rigid stance, the clipped voice, the tightly buttoned-up appearance, Father reminded me quite a bit of another horror icon, Terry Quinn's Stepfather, from that family-centered horror series of the same name. Like the Stepfather, Father offers up a calm demeanor if his rules are followed, but take one step outside of his expectations and you're swatted down. On the flip side, Vivian Nago is wonderful as the daughter. She is sympathetic but hard-headed. She's beat down but rises back up. Her story is inspirational, and it's easy to get into this film through her strong performance. The rest of the cast, Elise Din as Mother and Ian Alexander's son, deliver strong, bizarre performances, following Father's rules to a T, and often acting more like robots moving to Father's whims than actual personalities. Alexander is especially good as he attempts to understand his father's teachings, yet has questions that any teenager might have, and immediately gets them tamped down when those questions challenge Father's intentions. In the end, this is about a power attempting to control the uncontrollable. As seen in the opening moments, Daughter is not the first daughter who has been through this ordeal. This makes the entire experience all the more haunting because the rest of the family knows this, yet still acts as if this new daughter has been there all along. These little inhuman moments and details make the entire film thoroughly mortifying. There's a fantastic break from the norm during the climax that is beyond strange and actually fits well into the contrast between the controlled environment enforced by Father and the vibrant, childish minds trapped within. Daughter delivers a message that isn't new. It's about fighting against authority. It's about preserving one idealized concept totally, even though the concept may have always been fiction. but the way it delivers that message makes Daughter one effectively chilling film. Blood is new on-demand and digital download from Vertical Entertainment. It's directed by Brad Anderson and written by Will Honley. Single mother Jess, played by Michelle Monaghan, is struggling to keep up with her demanding job as a nurse, her former addiction to pills, and raising a pair of kids, Tyler, played by Skylar Morgan-Jones, and Owen, played by Finlay Wajak-Hisong. Jess is attempting to build a stable life for her kids and moves into a house in the country. But when the kid's dog takes an interest in a spooky old tree in the middle of a marsh, the dog disappears and returns later very different. When the dog bites Owen, it sends the young boy into the hospital where he develops a hunger that only blood can satiate. Now, Jess has to battle her own morality in order to get fresh human blood for Owen to keep him alive. Brad Anderson, who delivered the absolutely excellent Session 9, The Machinist, and much of the Fringe series, returns to horror with this vampire film and manages to never mention the word vampire once. Instead, Blood is grounded in reality, focusing on Owen's addiction to blood and Jess's dedication to sacrificing everything in order to fill this hunger. This film is a metaphor for the lengths a mother will go to protect and make sure her child is okay. The main problem is that Owen is everything but okay. He goes into convulsions if he eats regular food, and the longer he is without fresh blood, the closer he is to turning into a feral animal. The film puts Jess into a moral conundrum with no chance for a happy ending. Anderson and his writer Will Honey heap on problem after problem on the back of Monaghan's Jess, and there's no good end coming here. Monaghan is wonderful as Jess, an emotionally complex character faced with the decision to uphold the Hippocratic Oath as a nurse or break it in order to save someone she loves. With pressure from her ex-husband, played by a very restrained Skeet Ulrich, to be the perfect mother, and a past filled with opiate addiction, Jess is a powder keg, just clinging to some semblance of stability even before her son is bitten. Once she understands what she needs to do in order to save her child, Jess is forced to go against everything she believes and ignores everything else, causing all of her spinning plates to wobble and drop. It's heartbreaking to see Jess twist and turn in order to try to make things right, and fail so horribly with every step. Though the vampire story is overplayed, Anderson makes the story riveting the whole way through because of the real-life issues Jess and her family face. Seeing them try to adjust to this insane condition really works, and I found myself feeling every painful misstep Jess makes. The effects are pretty subtle. The glowing red eyes effect really communicates the inhuman nature of both the dog and Owen. Later, some more extreme makeup is used as Owen continues to lose his humanity, but for the most part, there's just a lot of blood splattered all over the place, a must for every modern vampire film. I was surprised how affected I was by this arduous drama with subtle supernatural elements. Anderson delivers an emotionally charged and viscerally impactful tale of motherhood. Anderson pulls no punches in running this entire family through the ringer, and while it hurts to watch it, I have to admire the way this predicament played out and the depths this film went by the end. Blood is not feel-good horror, but it is strongly acted and provides a conundrum that is as potent for tragedy as you can get. Finally, we have PIGGY, aka CERDITA. It's new streaming on Hulu. It's directed and written by Carlota Pereda. PIGGY is a unique thriller from Spain with a bold lead performance from plus-sized actress Laura Galán, who plays Sarah, the butcher's daughter and village outcast. After having her clothes stolen while swimming, Sarah crosses paths with a serial killer who has just abducted the gals who have been bullying her incessantly. Turns out the killer has a soft spot for the outcast, and a bizarre romance forms between the two. As the hunt for the missing girls intensifies, so does the relationship between Sarah and the killer. Part mystery, part Mean Girls, part twisted romance, PIGGY is a strange yet intriguing film. It begins by putting you in the shoes of the protagonist and witnessing the incessant torment she has endured. While there are terrifying things to come, this for me was the most horrifying part for me to watch. Seeing what these girls put Sarah through is simply inhumane, so you understand the hesitation Sarah has when she sees them about to get their comeuppance. Galán delivers a monumental performance as Sarah. It's bold and utterly brave. I know I wouldn't have the guts to appear in a bathing suit on camera, and that's some of the least embarrassing moments of the film. She's just a powerhouse here, communicating volumes with very little dialogue, but when she does speak and act, it's concussive. But after the first segment, where we are put through Sarah's emotional ringer, it turns into a suspense story/love story. It would be quite a leap for Sarah to fall for the killer, but it all works. Once we get to know Sarah's plight, we understand why she might develop feelings for this first person to show her kindness. It's a falling into love story, kind of like a descent into madness story. Writer, director Carlotta Pereda makes every step understandable. But of course, this leads to a crisis of conscience for Sarah, who, unlike the killer, seems to know right from wrong. Sarah has to choose between the one guy who doesn't treat her badly, who happens to be a ruthless killer, or saving the girls who bully her. The answer is not as easy as it seems. It's a complex conundrum brought to light excellently. I found Piggy to be genuinely unpredictable, emotionally complex, and Laura Gagnon kicks ass as the unconventional lead. The film doesn't shy away from the action, intrigue, and moral and psychological complexity dealing with social anxieties and societal norms in terms of what is beauty. The film also gets quite gory in the end, making Piggy a slam-bang knockout of a film with a little bit of everything for everyone. I highly recommend this shining indie gem from Spain.
You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your reality. You're doomed. Oh, you're doomed. You're doomed. God live the life that you are meant to be. Live inside that reality.